Bonjour tout le monde, c'est moi, madame. Today I'd like to show you some stem change verbs. They look like they could be regular ER verbs, but something special has to happen in the stem to make them agree. Let's take a look. The first one I want to show you is acheter. Acheter, to buy. We use this verb when we talk about purchasing items. So notice how I say it. Acheter, acheter. We don't say this E in the center at all. It's just to help us say ash, and then we go on to take. So we don't hear this. And we don't need to because we have an ending that we're going to say. So to conjugate this ER verb, and it is an ER verb, we're going to drop the ER and we're left with our root. But remember how we said that. Acheter. Acheter. So if we put that root in here and say all of the the endings with it, it's not going to sound quite right. So we have to put an accent on it. Notice that I've gone ahead and done that. And it's only for these four. So why would these four get an accent and these two would not? It has to do with the pronounced ending. Because we're going to pronounce the ONS and the EZ, and we're not going to pronounce EES, E, or ENT, that's going to change how we have to say these words. Because if you just put asht over here, then you're trying to make that into a verb. Jasht, tu asht, il asht. And it doesn't quite sound right. So we put the accent. It's the accent grave. Starts top left and goes to the bottom right. And it makes an E sound like an eh sound. So this is now j'achète, tu achètes, il achète, elle achète, on achète, ils achètent, elles achètent. So all four of these will be pronounced alike and they get an accent on them, only because we have a silent ending that's going to impede us from saying the proper word. And we get over here, we have endings that are not silent, so we can say them just like we would the infinitive. No accent needed. Nous achetons, vous achetez. There are other verbs that are like acheter, so as they come up later on, I'll say, oh, that one's like acheter. And you'll say, ah, yes, I remember that, where we have to put an accent grave on what was normally an E that was glossed over. And then nous and vous will not get anything. Here's another type. Préférer. Préférer. Préférer has two accents, and they're both accent aigus. It makes an E sound like an A. So if we want to conjugate this verb, which is to prefer, thank goodness, because it looks just like it. If we want to conjugate this regular ER verb, we have to get rid of the ER. So we're left with a root that looks like prefer. So we put all of that in there, but notice I changed the accent. Now, why would I do that? Well, in these particular ones that have the silent ending, if I tried to say préférer without the ER, and then tried to make it a word all by itself, it would sound like this. Je préfère, tu préfères, il préfère. And we don't want it to sound like that. It sounds very awkward, and if you could see my face right now, it's not very attractive to say it. We want to change this. So this is the A sound, but this one will now be an E sound. It's so much more comfortable to say. Je préfère. Tu préfères. Il préfère. Elle préfère. On préfère. And the plurals. Il préfère. Elle préfère. Once again, because we have an ending that we're going to pronounce, we don't have to make those changes to the nous and vous forms. Nous préférons. Vous préférez. This one sounds just like the infinitive, so you know that one's not going to change. So again, silent endings mean that we're going to have to change something in our root or stem. This particular type means accent aigu changes to accent grave, just to make it more comfortable to say and easier to hear. Our last type is payer. Payer means to pay, like when you pay money for something that you buy. So obviously acheter and payer, you're going to see a whole lot together. So here's why we have an issue with this one. The Y sound is very similar to an I sound, but there's something that the Y sound does that I does not do in a French word, and that's the Y sound. It connects to the next syllable. So if you're not going to have another syllable, you don't need the Y sound. Example, take off the ER. If we were to put PAY with silent letters behind it, we'd be inclined to say that Y sound. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to say je paye, tu paye, il paye, elle paye, on paye. That would be weird sounding. So we want to change it to an I, which will lead into the silent E and just be a one syllable word. Je paie, tu paies, il paie, elle paie, on paie. Plural side, il paie, elle paie. Since we have endings that we're going to say in the nu and vu form, we can leave the Y there because that Y sound is going to lead us into our endings that we're going to say. Nous payons, vous payez, which sounds just like our infinitive. So we have three different kinds of spelling change verbs. We have ones like acheter, where you have to add an accent that doesn't exist there to begin with. We have ones like préférer, where you have to change an existing accent to make it more comfortable to say. And then we have ones like payer, where you have to change the Y into an I. Another way that these are referred to is as boot or stem verbs, because the part that you're going to be changing fits into a shoe shape. We're going to change all of the singulars and the third person plural. And for our last one, there's our boot or our shoe. So if you ever hear me call them shoe verbs, this is why. Whatever fits in this shoe is going to have to change from the original infinitive. I hope that's helpful for you, and we'll be practicing more with stem changers or shoe or boot verbs later on. Au revoir.